bit about what's the purpose of the discussion series and the topic for today, which is quality of life. So as Lois kicked off the conversation last month, we are looking to improve our assessment of projects on our transportation system so that we're making smart investments. And there's a number of ways we can do that. We can look at our different guiding principles in our long-range plan and decide how to, each of those can be measured appropriately to see what does success look like. So I'm going to talk a bit about what quality of life and how it's defined within the context of our long-range plan, and then just be thinking about that over the next few slides. And I have some questions for you at the end to have a discussion about what does quality of life mean to you and your community in the context of transportation? What does it mean to our region? And how do we measure success? So we have lots of need in our community in terms of transportation infrastructure and so on, but we have a finite amount of resources and funding. So we want to make sure that we're making smart decisions. So when we think of quality of life, I think it's common for people to think about amenities, the parks, destinations, built environment, quality neighborhoods, local business, arts, the natural environment. So all these great amenities that our region offers, I think people may think of that when they think of quality of life. Also recognizing that it's like a broad reaching topic too, so it can mean different things to different people. But what I will say is that in terms of all these amenities, these are all destinations. So people need to get there. And the transportation system binds it all together. So when we're thinking of a quality of life from the perspective of the region and within our long-range plan, we think of convenient access for all modes of transportation. So not only being able to drive there, but are there convenient and safe ways to bike and walk and take transit. And as I said, that quality of life is a broad-reaching topic potentially, and certainly has overlap with some of our other 6 guiding principles in Horizon 2045, such as safety, economic vitality, or equity. But I'm going to talk a bit more about how it's defined and how it's discussed in the long-range plan. So in Horizon 2045, quality of life is described as a balanced transportation system that's truly multimodal. So it focuses on having transportation choices. So there's more than one way to get to destinations that you would like to get to. And it's safe and convenient for all users. And one thing that we do know is we can track use of the system, specifically of the transit and active transportation uses. So the graphic on the right shows that we have a number of counters around the region on some of our regional trails, and that we can track use of that over time. So we do know that in peak months in spring and summer, there's 2,000 to 3,000 users that are being counted at these counting stations. We can also track STA ridership. So we know that at least pre-pandemic, that STA ridership was hovering around 10 million per year. And so what's distinct, I would say, about these metrics is typically, I think we as an agency and in our policies and plans would like to see these metrics go up. So we would like to see, more usage on our trail network. We would like to see ridership trend to go up over time. And I think that's distinct from, say, another metric like vehicle miles traveled or average daily traffic, where I don't think it's not the goal of the agency or communities in general to say we want more average daily traffic. So that's a unique thing about these particular measures that we can track over time. And this is important for a number of reasons. That diversity of transportation choice, want to create a system that is complementary. So again, having more than one way to get to a destination, that builds some redundancy and resiliency in the system as well. And we really want to focus on connectivity and access. If you think about those destinations that people want to get to, whether it be an activity center, other amenities, employers, that we want to have a good connectivity for more than one mode to get to those different destinations. And then the final 3 bullets there, I'll say, is that there's certain benefits that can come out of promoting choices that are such as active transportation and transit. There's a public health benefit. So I'm sure you've heard lots of discussion about an epidemic of chronic disease and obesity in our communities. And one way to help combat that is allowing people to go out and be more active. Also, there's an air quality benefit. So if people are choosing to use different modes rather than driving, there's certainly air quality benefits for the region as well. Equity really ties back to that transportation choice again. So I would say there's a number of people in our community who are either too young or perhaps aged out of driving or do not have access to a car. So you want to make sure that everyone has equitable access to opportunity in our community. And then the last is the economic and cost. So there's a couple different ways to think about that. One is the cost to a household for transportation. So if someone has more than one way or perhaps a more budget-friendly way to get to where they need to go to their employment and so on, then that saves in their overall household costs. And also there's evidence out there that suggests investment in transportation infrastructure, specifically trails and those types of amenities. There's an economic benefit to that as well in terms of property valuation and just all overall economic activity. And then I should also mention that we want to have convenient access and good quality facilities out there. Part of that is the user experience. So if we're thinking of more the active transportation modes, whether it be walking or biking, we recognize, and I think it's pretty universal, that people don't necessarily want to be riding their bike on a 5-lane arterial. So we want to know that the user experience is accessible to everyone. So it encourages use. That sense of place. And then also I'll mention maintenance. I think once we have these facilities in place, it's important to make sure that they're well maintained and inviting. So there's a number of ways that we currently do in terms of how do we get there to enhance transportation choice within our region. So within Horizon 2045, we have priority networks for our high performance transit network and also a bicycle network, which encourages connectivity and improvement in those networks across the region. Of course, we also have project and program support. And that's the type of thing that we're thinking of with this discussion is what makes a good project? What kind of checks the boxes for quality of life when we're looking at promoting or supporting a certain project. Was also complete streets policies to make sure that when a road is reconstructed or constructed, that it is thought about how it can accommodate all users. And then there's data analysis. A couple of slides ago, I showed how we can track use around the region. And so we want to see that where we're making investments or where there perhaps should be investments, that those are being efficacious and positive impacts on use and getting to the communities that perhaps need it the most. So what are other ways we can measure? What are indicators of quality of life within the context of Horizon 2045? One thing we do is we just track miles of facility type, so miles of bike lane, and year over year that's going up. So we kind of look at that measure. Maybe doesn't mean a whole lot, except we can see that it's trending up over time. We can look at network density, which is, if you think about in a grid system of streets, it has greater number of options to get to one location. So there's many intersections, there's many ways to kind of choose different routes. So that's one way to think about, particularly if you're walking or biking, this may be some indicator of accessibility. Level of traffic stress really gets at that user experience. So it's something that we're looking at doing within the region in terms of our bicycling network, is seeing that the facilities that are out there, if they're on a road that tends to be higher speeds and higher volume, then that's going to be higher traffic stress versus lower speeds, lower volumes, that will be lower traffic stress. So that's about that user experience. Of course, on the transit side, you can look at proximity to bus stops across the region, transit frequency, and also mode share of what types of modes are people choosing when they're making trips. So with all that context, I'm going to move to the next slide, which is going to ask a couple of discussion questions. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair. So when we're looking through the lens of quality of life and how I just described it as a accessible, convenient, multimodal transportation system, how do we measure success for the projects we're trying to promote? And are there other metrics that we should be thinking about? And this is the part where I'd like to hear from you all and hopefully get some feedback. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Again, this is one of 6 of our guiding principles. There'll be others coming forward to discuss, but for today, we want to talk about how do we want to measure success for our projects. And I'll open the floor for anyone who has any thoughts on that, thoughts on quality of life. Feel free.
Jason, this is, oh, sorry, whoever else was there. Mike, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin. I'll wait.
I'm late.
Please. So I guess real quick, the question I would have, Jason, is have we contemplated, it seems like we should be in some sort of public engagement discussion here. I'm not sure that it would be or should be just up to this board to set that metric into motion. Should we not maybe be asking a question or two around this and use that as sort of a way for us to establish a set of principles? So I would just throw that out for conversation.
Good comment.
Jason, Kevin Freeman from City of
Mayor.
Could you roll back a few slides to where you had the map of the current ped bike sorts of trails we have? There we go. I think one of the metrics, as you said, is alternate routes and connectivity. We seem to have a lot of trails that kind of start and stop with no real interconnection. And I think a metric that we might want to consider is what is the level of completeness of these trail systems, these ped bike trail systems that we're putting together? Because I mean, I'll bang my tin can very quickly. In the recent transportation bill that just was put forth by the legislature under the Move Ahead Washington plan, the City of Spokane's portion of the Millwood Interurban Trail was requested to be funded at $5.8 million, and in the SRTC's October 2021 package of the unified list, it was screened out at 5.7, and that would give 2 lengths of that trail. But once again, we would have a gap in that sort of trail system where City of Spokane Valley would have to step forward and complete their portion of the trail from Fancher to Vista. And so these types of gaps that we see here, where we have isolated segments of trail that don't really seem to go anywhere, I think that kind of limits the overall aspect of individuals to be able to use these as complete modes of transportation. It's particularly when we're talking about, as you said, that appearance of accessibility by having to not cross 5 lanes of unrestricted traffic flow to get from one side of the trail to the other, or have to navigate down, busy traffic corridors to reach the next length of this. So that's my one thing. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Wilkerson.
Yes, I have to affirm what Mike Ribner said about some community engagement. And I would think this quality of life would really go hand in hand with the equity piece. I did, yeah. When we're talking to the community, that I don't know if we can really separate them and really get the type of feedback that we're looking for.
Does that help? A good point. I was thinking somewhat of the same. Did you get that, Jason?
Yes, sir, I did.
Any other thoughts, comments on quality of life for Jason?
Mr. Chair, if I could follow up.
Yes.
To Councilmember Wilkerson's point,
Okay,
All of these different principles overlap and they are connected like a web, certainly. And you're spot on. And we can certainly go out with this item or any others and do some community surveys and some community engagement to bring back to this board some of the thoughts as well. So I appreciate those particular comments.
thank you, Lois. Councilmember Weathers, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to share, I think, as quality of life discussions go in transportation, to me, I think multimodal conversations line up really well. It's where people interface with these transportation and where it has the most meaning. So I just, the things that I think that tie in well is this notion of multimodal transportation, not just for people, but for goods as well, freight. And then the other thing I was going to say is safety, I think also ties tremendously with quality of life. So metrics related to safety, and I'd also echo the continuity piece from Mayor Freeman.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments?
Chair, Councilmember Wilkerson here again.
Thank you.
I also
Yes.
have to, thank you, look at a specific piece. This is for me, for the aging population. We look at quality of life, but I think that might need a kind of a special lens on that quality of life piece of how we are meeting or not meeting those needs across the board.
All right. Very good. Anybody else have a hand up?
I didn't put my hand up. Terry Cooper.
Mayor Cooper?
Yeah, Mayor Medical Lake. I want to expand on the trail connectivity issue. And I think it's really important for quality of life that we look at the connectivity of the trail systems from the rural areas. We have bits and pieces of them, pretty good one, you know, from Cheney, but there's still those gaps and folks can only go so far. And so while we're talking about transportation, there's also just the health benefits of quality of life of having an entire trail system that would be connected for the region. And I think that would really add a lot of value to our region if we could include that.
Oh, very good, thank you. I had just a thought where we have an upcoming presentation on safety targets, I guess. Jason, just in its base form, that's I guess a means to measure, you know, how well we're doing as far as the most general idea of safety. And then secondly, I don't know how you measure it, but I guess it's trying to measure a sense in that as we travel about our region. For me, a quality of life is you have the sense in that you can get from point A to point B safely and timely. And again, I don't know how you measure that, but that to me is a major component of what, when we're talking about quality of life in our region. Other thoughts and comments for discussion? As Lois mentioned, these are intertwined, so we'll be having more of these discussions, so we'll look forward to that. Did you get what you needed for now, Jason?
Yes, yeah, I appreciate the comments, and of course, feel free to reach out to myself or any of us if you have additional thoughts that come up. And I think, yeah, in terms of what I heard from the board, yeah, that it could open up a whole new discussion. I kind of want to keep talking about it, but in the interest of time, I think I absorbed those comments well, and I think the points have been well taken.
Very good, thank you. If there is anything further, you can always get a hold of Jason